open and honest about, oh yeah, and this meeting is being recorded. I should have said that. So please press the continue, but I understand if you want to leave because of the recording. Listen humbly and be curious, and type in the chat what other ground rules would y'all like to establish for this teach-in as we continue throughout. So I'm going to go to the chat real quick to see if there's anything that I should say.
And if you don't want to be recorded, you can also just turn off your video and you can stay in the call that way.
Right.
So any other grounding rules folks have that they generally like at a community event like this?
Mute if not talking to minimize background noise. I agree with that one. Any other grounding rules? And if not, we can continue.
Okay.
All right.
So me and Bree are the co-directors of Delicious Democracy, which is one of the, we're sort of the founding group that started working on Rank the Vote DC and started this coalition. We're DC's creative advocacy lab, and we've been sort of exploring these ideas of how do we use culture in strategic ways? How do we bring culture into advocacy, not just as a nice feel-good thing, but as an integrated intersectional part of it. And so we've discovered this, you know, obviously everybody's discovering it as the world changes, this emergent kind of cultural solution of political movement we're calling equitism, rooted in equity. And it's not a solution like a one size fits all, this is how you fix everything, like a lot of capitalists talk about the free market. This is a solution like a chemical solution of all the different pieces mixed together, where problems don't ever go away, but they dissolve, and it's really of a dance about how we really actually think about approaching solving problems or approaching addressing issues in the world. There's sort of 5 tenets that we've found in equitism. That's community ownership, intersecting worlds, balancing systemic tensions, delicious food, and infinite play. So that is equitism and delicious democracy. And now I want to take a quick moment just for everyone to take a breath and close your eyes if you'd like. And this is both to center yourself after a kind of a long day of being, you know, doing whatever you need to be doing to survive or to make it work or to make this world work for you. But also to start to think about, what do we want our government to look like? How do we want our government to work? And whether that is specific things you want to tweak, or just what would it look like to have a delicious democracy, to have a system that felt good to be a part of. So let's just take a minute to kind of just breathe and be with that. Okay, embracing silence. So now we're gonna, you can continue, this is really kind of the theme that we're gonna explore this whole teaching or this whole training. So feel free to keep considering that. And we're gonna go into quick breakouts where you're just gonna get paired off with someone random and introduce yourself and answer these questions, right? So statehood, you know, might be within the next 100 days, right? It's kind of incredible that it's so close. So I want to explore, what does this mean for our city? What does this mean for the nation? What might be possible now that we can do as a jurisdiction, as a city state, that we couldn't do before? And what kind of state do we want to build? So I'm going to throw this to Rohan to pair folks off randomly. And then we're just going to have 3 minutes or so of introduce yourself quickly and answer these questions. So what does it mean to have statehood now? What's possible, and what kind of state do we want to build?
So you should get a notification inviting you to join a breakout room, and there'll be one room of 3 people. But yeah, it looks like people are getting them. So just accept that notification, and yeah, see you in a little bit. Hi, Ralph. Can you hear me? Are you there, Ralph? Stop. All right, I think we'll just give everyone a couple more seconds to hop out of the breakout rooms. I think I messed up the timing on that. But thanks for bearing with us.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back. So this is the Ambassadors of the Future training. So as y'all were just talking,
if there's any good stuff that came out of your conversations. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, like go ahead and type it in the chat. Like, what did y'all envision the future 51st state to look like? What were some things that you were super inspired by that another person was saying to you?
What's possible?
What's possible? Yeah. So ambassadors are advocates, but it's also about not about kind of going with this dogma of this is what we should do and this is how we must do things. It's more about asking questions and listening and questioning, how does power work? How does power intersect with problems that currently exist, and how can we change power?
Are there any folks in the chat talking about it? Feel free to also just like other thoughts as they come just from your conversations of what you want to throw that in the chat. So ambassadors also use everything. So we're talking about breath, heart, mind, brain, belly, body, curiosity, joy,
a lot of keywords,
empathy, communication, data, and wisdom. So it's, I think a lot people talk about only we have to prove this works through data and only like try and logicize and get everyone to understand it really academically. And I think especially with ranked choice voting, that a lot isn't what's going to move people. People have to understand the values. People have to see the vision of what we're trying to get to in order to really see how powerful and game-changing it is. And I think as advocates and as ambassadors, we need to be willing to be playful, be using our body. I'm in another life, I'm an improv comedian or improvisational facilitator. And so I'm really interested in how do we build improv skills into the skills of being an advocate. And that really is about, not really about telling jokes, but about having a sense of humor, about being joyful, resourceful, finding truth, dancing in the conversation, like we're saying, intersecting worlds, and connecting these kind of abstract ideas to the real tangible things. And that's really also crucial for any kind of door knocking, canvassing, organizing work that you're going to do.
I also want to say, like, connecting, so abstract ideas to the tangible, I think is crucial, especially for things like, ranked choice voting. I mean, even for some people, DC statehood, maybe not in DC, but I think it's super important for us to be able to dance in the conversations and show why maybe like the root problems and how it affects people's day-to-day lives. I think those conversations are extremely crucial. People are really worried about, how am I going to make rent? How am I going to feed my kids? Why are you talking about something that isn't really addressing what is currently happening in my life? And so that's some of the things that we as ambassadors have to dance in the conversations around those, is connecting like actual struggle and how ranked choice voting can help lay the groundwork for fair representation that can precipitate through like policy and things like that. So next slide.
Oh, yeah.
Also, you can make a statement. So this is something that is extremely easy, and with the blessings of technology, just making a short video, talking straight to directly to your community, asking questions and answering them. What do I want for the future 51st state? Also saying, hey, like, I don't know, it could be any kind of video posted on any type of social media that you feel the most comfortable with. So I would probably, I don't know what I would do, but I would feel like maybe making like an Instagram story saying, hey, let's have an Instagram live even about like, what does the future of 51st state look like for folks, and really bringing it to the conversations around the future of democracy.
And we're sort of also offering this. We don't have to do this now, but as an action that we'd love for folks to take to start to really talk about and challenge their folks in their communities to think about, you know, what you want and what you want for a future of democracy and of politics, and maybe connect it to ranked choice voting or maybe not. And if you'd like to, you can go to rankthe.vote/testimony to submit it when we have a chance to do that later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's chat's blowing up on ranked choice voting stuff too. We can get to that later though, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go to the toxic politics. So to get to where we want to go, we have to address where we are too. And I think one of the things that we've tried to build a narrative around, which is true across the board in national and local politics, and I think there's a lot of it in DC politics as well, of just toxicity, right? Where the game is all about zero sum ego games, and it's really a culture of power and culture of politics where people don't want to participate in it, right? And that's what people are talking about. If you have third-party views, if you're an independent, if you don't quite fit in easily, even in DC, between a progressive or a moderate, nobody really is speaking to you. And our system is sort of set up to perpetuate that toxicity and those inequities.
So type in the chat, how does toxic culture show up in our power systems, especially here in DC? What are some things that come to mind for you in our city and even in ourselves? How does this toxic culture show up?
To start, people are talking about how ranked choice voting requires people to court a wider slice of the electorate rather than just playing to that small kind of base and knocking down everyone else. Financial interests, corporate candidates, negative campaigning and discussions for sure. And personal attacks and attacks on on civic groups, on, you know, it really becomes about like, whose side are you on? That's really what everything becomes. It doesn't really, there's no meaningful discussion in our current toxic politics. Everything is about realistic things or electability is another part of that. All politics becomes binary for sure. Something we talk about is there's also a dynamic, especially in DC, of wait your turn. Whatever your ideology, because you might split the vote, you might spoil it if you jump in, or pressuring candidates to drop out instead of keeping their voice in the mix.
To me, that is like the most detrimental thing, I think, for our democracy. Well, not the most, there's so many things, but to me, it really translates to, that means that women and people of color are not gonna run for offices as much if there is so much pressure for there only to everyone to coalesce around the woman candidate, the Black candidate, blah, blah, blah. Like there's a whole bunch of like vote splitting and this like anxiety around spoiling the election just because someone wants to represent their community or for whatever reasons. And so I think by just tweaking the way in which we engage in politics actually provides a much more healthier political environment for everybody, from the voter to the candidate, to people who are canvassing, to everything. So I think that is where I definitely see how it affects me, my friends, like directly, is I see people being told, wait your turn. And it's not, to me, right.
Yeah.
And it weakens our democracy.
Also talking about like kind of progressives versus moderates. There's a lot of battle lines, Black versus white, newcomer versus native, like these kinds of different things where it's all about angling to sort of get these communities on your side when people contain multitudes, and our system really reduces us to be these kinds of really small ways of understanding who we are, what our desires are, and what's possible, like we were saying before, with politics.
Right.
Elizabeth's also talking about political corruption, which often gets talked, we need to have public financing, other kinds of campaign finance reform. But when you have that and more people run, then you get these weird outcomes where people can win with under 15% of the vote.
So now with all these like toxic politics in mind.
One more thing, which is just that everything's 100% or nothing, right? You can't critique Biden because he's so much better than Trump, but maybe we should be able to critique Biden and still have that complexity at play.
These are some great perspectives in the chat here.
And feel free to keep throwing thoughts in, but we're going to move on.
Yeah, so with understanding, I guess, how toxic politics can be, maybe not all the time, but can be, we are in the space of how do we strengthen our communities and our culture. And we call this a probiotic future. So antibiotic is this mindset of being against, wanting to destroy and eliminate. And there's places for that, but there's also
organizing around suffering. Right?
And organizing around suffering.
All the bad things and organizing to defeat those bad things.
And then there's also the space that I think we need to strengthen this muscle of actually saying what we're for, providing this probiotic future around desire, around what we want things to look like, feel like, who do we want to benefit from this? And I always think in my head, who is benefiting from like my self-doubt and from my imposter syndrome, from my feelings that I'm not good enough? And then how do I flip that on its head? So I want to say,
should we just make the prompt and then you can keep sorry, go ahead though.
Well, I was just about to say that we are not here to have fixes for problems that are offered that reduce and seek to eliminate. And I often derive my organizing tactics from Black, queer, feminist organizers who are leading the movement of organizing around desire and things like that. And I think Adrienne Maree Brown is one of the organizers who I deeply admire in her philosophy. And she's like a product of Audre Lorde's philosophy. So I think that is an extremely important to understand, like, where are these philosophies coming from and what are you standing for? So yeah, the prompt would be, how would it affect your communities to change the culture of politics? So I would like you to type into the chat, what can we add to our communities? How do we organize around desire? And what kind of future are we actually working towards? So take a couple of seconds to give your perspective on how would it affect your communities to change the culture of politics?
And I think democracy reform doesn't get connected to, sorry for cutting you off earlier, by the way, doesn't get connected to culture enough. But I think that's very meaningful to people. And I think what's cool about ranked choice is that it does allow for it's one of the few structural changes that leads to that kind of cultural shift. So is any of this resonating with folks? How do you think, type in the chat and tell us sort of like, how would it affect, how do you start to see impacts on some of the issues and some of the more immediate community things that a shift in culture might affect?
And no worries if nothing comes to mind right now, but if it does, just feel free to pop it in the chat anytime.
Less fighting about electability and actually building on concrete objectives, and also just like issue-based campaigns. Making a politics more approachable.
People feeling like their vote counts more. Yeah.
And then making it seem like there's more space for people who have a different perspective, who aren't electable to want to join, and then for people who aren't interested in those kinds of candidates, aren't in the political class, as Imara says, there would be actually space for them. Make people feel like their vote counts. Community would be safer without the toxicity that led to the failed right-wing insurrection last week. Absolutely.
Yes, that's actually something that in another teach-in, someone was like, when I think of ranked choice voting, what I tie it to is community safety, about how we go about electing people who are bold to take on actually addressing the inequities in the power systems of MPD and things like that. So that's also something that is like this meta level of addressing community safety that is really worth exploring. And let's move on to the next slide, but please continue to drop it in the chat if something inspires you.
So these are some of the ideas that we've wanted to kind of think about. And I think some of these came up in our conversation at the beginning of ways to change power systems that would benefit, work well with ranked choice voting that have already been talked about or already been thrown out. So one is anti-gerrymandering. I think a lot of people agree that's horrible. It happens in DC. It's going to happen this year.
There's redistricting this year.
And it's going to be done by the council. And it's going to be done by ANCs who want their district to maintain in them. So we should have independent redistricting in DC as well. We're going to get into this a little bit more, but thinking about multi-winner ranked choice voting, which also helps to get rid of some gerrymandering where, and this ties in with expanding DC Council, if we had 4 representatives per ward and 2 or 4 of them, depending on how we want to arrange the sequence of people getting elected, would get elected each time. And what that leads to is more proportional ranked choice voting or a proportional representation where the communities are reflected in their elected body, right? And that's something that right now, because of our winner take all and zero sum system, we don't have. So, and there's, I think someone put this in the chat, there's a Fair Representation Act in Congress that actually would make the entire United States bigger districts that each elected 3 to 5 different Congress people. And it guarantees that smaller people are harder to, or smaller communities are harder to gerrymander and more likely to be able to still elect someone from their community. I think expanding DC Council is really powerful. Also, feel free to type in the chat other ideas as I keep talking about these ones that we have out here. So what else can we do to change our power systems? So expanding DC Council right now, part of the corruption is they all need each other. So if we had a lot more of them, they could take more honest votes instead of horse trading. Vote 16, lowering the voting age for really informed people who we've randomly said don't count in our system. So 16 and 17-year-olds. Blanket primaries where everyone votes in the same primary. And then there isn't, again, this like weird artificial power structure government of the Democratic Party, which, you know, for better or for worse, it means that a lot of people have to kind of distort the way that they actually run both as candidates and vote as voters.
I mean, just to bring that home.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks who run for as independents and say are at-large race are Democrats who just changed their D to an I when running. And I think that is because there is this weird strategy of having to, I don't know, play along party lines just to get elected. And I think ranked choice voting would eliminate that speculation.
Yeah. And the last thing we'll say here, and again, if you have any other ideas, please throw it in the chat. Community first responders. So in response to a lot of the calls to defund the police, there's this proposal or this, you know, world of proposals where we would create an alternative to the police that wouldn't necessarily be an attack on the police, though, you know, I think, anyway, there's a whole other conversation, but would provide mental health services, social services, EMTs, and people so you can call a non-violent force to show up to crises. It's a little different than these other changes, but I think is also related to ways that we can have a power system in the city that actually speaks to people's needs and helps meet them and tries to actually represent them instead of having it all be about toxicity and finding bad guys and good guys. Yeah, and I see in the chat also people wanting to expand the size of council, and that was in our the Constitution that we passed in 2016. So we're hopeful that if we get statehood, that will happen, and maybe even more than just doubling the size.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot is possible with the Constitutional Convention 2 years after statehood. So that is why we're starting this conversation early. So there's a lot of things out there that we can do. I think the most concrete step towards building a stronger democracy is passing ranked choice voting for the District of Columbia. I think there's several talking points on this slide, you know, dissolve toxicity, no more vote splitting. But the the vision that I really like about it is that you're really free to vote for who you really want. You're not punished for having a favored or preferred candidate who is not considered the electable candidate. And there's just a lot of voter shaming around how we vote. And that also is incredibly toxic for a democracy. We should be able to celebrate our votes. And I think ranked choice voting allows us to be more celebratory about what we actually feel better represents us in our communities. And then maybe ranking who you think might be the strategy choice second or third or whatever. And no system is perfect. And that's why we're here to talk about ranked choice voting. And even if this is, I just want to take a moment, even if this is your first time hearing about ranked choice voting, please still take this opportunity to try, as we go into the practice groups, try and take this opportunity to articulate how you're understanding what we're talking about, what this means for you and your communities. So now we're going to go into a quick video on what is ranked choice voting.
So this is a quick refresher for folks. Oh, hold on a second.
Politics is tearing us apart.
Ooh. That's not good.
I think it's because you might have your sound over there.
Yeah, if you mute yourself, it might help.
I don't know how to do this though. How are you? Hear music?
All right, this should work.
Well, I'm not so positive about that, but because I don't think
if it doesn't, then we can just explain it and drop the video link in the chat.
What's this?
Each of us can vote for the
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do right now is drop the video link in the chat, and people, sorry about that, folks. We tried this earlier and it didn't do this, so.
No, I can't even see this. There we go.
So with ranked choice voting, I can just explain it right now. You have the power to rank your preferences like 1, 2, 3. And if your first choice doesn't win, meaning someone does not get a majority of the vote, then your vote automatically goes to your second choice, and it will continue until someone wins with a majority of the vote. And what's, I think, changes the system about that is that currently, if you actually vote for, say, a less popular person, then your vote is wasted right now. Whereas ranked choice voting actually allows you to vote the way you want to vote and feel empowered to vote. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted.
Do we want to do it on your computer? Because I think it'll work that way. Or...
Oh, sure.
Okay, but now you got a screen share.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks everyone for being so patient.
Okay, here we go.
It's because elections aren't working for most of us. Here's why. In the US, each of us can vote for the candidate we like the most, but whenever more than 2 candidates are running to win 1 seat, it's possible for most voters to hate whoever wins. Because of this split vote, politicians can ignore the will of most voters and still win. Ranked choice voting gives you the freedom to select a backup choice to prevent that from happening. Let's say a group uses ranked choice voting to decide what to eat for dinner tonight. Each voter selects their favorite dish, but also has the option to choose backup dishes. If one food receives more than half the votes, it wins, just like in any other election. But let's get to dessert, where the competition is more fierce. What if no ice cream flavor has more than 50% of the vote? Under a normal race, vanilla would win, even though a majority of voters didn't pick it. With ranked choice voting, the flavor with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who chose that flavor as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. Everyone gets a say, no one wastes their vote, and the winner is the flavor that the largest number of people agreed upon. That's ranked choice voting. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. You get more voice and more choice, and that makes elections better for all of us.
All right, sorry about all that technical shit. Yeah. Okay. So, I think your camera's off.
Oh. Okay, so now that is what is called single winner ranked choice voting. And so now we're going into multi-winner, which is exactly like single winner, except with one more tweak, which means that there are more seats available instead of just one seat, which is why there's multi-winner RCVs. So when someone reaches a majority or a winning threshold, so for one winner, the majority would be 50%. For two winners or for two seats,
like in our at-large races.
Like in our at-large races, the majority would then be 33%. So after someone reaches a majority and one seat is filled, if they have extra votes beyond the threshold they needed to win, as you can see in round 3, then a portion of the surplus goes to their voters' second choices until the next seat is filled. And this is to ensure that even if you voted for someone who got a seat, you are still getting to have input in who gets the second seat. So this system creates, the fairest outcomes and is a pathway to proportional representation, where the makeup of the community matches the makeup of elected representatives.
So this is a bigger topic, so we don't want to dig too in. But if you have questions about multi-winner, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to kind of engage on it a little more. This would only happen for seats that elect 2 or more in the same election. So our at-large would be the only time it would be relevant. Okay, so let's vote. So go to rankthe.vote/freedomfighters. And
I'll put it in the chat.
And we're going to actually just do a quick practice round for any folks who aren't super familiar with it. You can put it in the chat here. And this will just get a chance. Oh no, you sent it to Rohan. Just to get a chance to feel what it feels like. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask if you feel comfortable, just while we're in the middle of the event here, to let's take a picture of everyone. So if you can take off your, or turn on your camera, I should say, and get ready for a smile here.
Oh my God.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. All right, beautiful.
As you're voting.
Yeah, as you continue to vote.
And yeah, so basically one thing I do want to say is, even though their multi-winner just has one more step in the back end, voters, however, will vote the exact same way of ranking their preferences. And it's the same way you vote, either in a single winner or multi-winner race.
Okay, so while we vote, we're going to cover the results towards the end of the teach-in.
Yes.
But we really want to actually engage y'all again in terms of practicing, talking about ranked choice voting, talking about the future. So let's practice a little bit. We're going to do a quick kind of pitch, how I would pitch it to Bree. We have some talking points here on this slide.
So we're going to simulate how we go about our canvassing and talking to folks at farmers markets and honestly doing field work in the street, just talking to people.
And so I'm not going to use this as a script. I'm just going to use this as stuff to kind of pull from. And we're going to encourage you when we break out again into pairs to kind of do the same. Just pull from this and get inspired from these talking points. Be like, hi there, have you heard of ranked choice voting?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it gives voters the power to rank their preferences. And knowing that if their first choice doesn't win, it automatically goes to their second choice. And it keeps going until someone wins with a real majority. You know, we always talk about vote and we yell that at people, but we never talk about how we vote. And we really think that there's a lot of toxicity and inequity in the systems of power and in our elections. We always force people to vote for the lesser of two evils or worry about electability or vote splitting and spoilers. Ranked choice voting gets rid of all of that and really makes it so you're free to vote for who you really want. And it's really just about strengthening democracy. So yeah, does that sound interesting to you?
I think I'm a bit confused. So can you explain to me, how does, you know, what if I like someone? What is the second and third choice? Does it hurt my first choice?
No, yeah, you can. That's what's cool about it, is there's no need to strategically vote. You vote for your favorite first, even if they're not electable according to everyone else. And then you can put the more electable backup candidates. Like in the last election, everyone hated Trump, but Biden wasn't people's first choices. So you could still put the Green Party candidate, you could put an independent, you could put Bernie Sanders if that's who you really like. And then you could
I'm sorry. Why are we talking about ranked choice voting? We have people who are literally trying to get rent paid by the end of this month.
Yeah.
Why talk about this? What is the importance of ranked choice voting right now?
I think that's a good point. You know, it doesn't change everything. It's not there's no perfect system, but it allows us to build a better system in the future, right? Once we start to have politicians who will actually speak to a majority and actually build positive and less toxic campaigns, they'll actually speak to these issues that really affect people down, you know, on the ground. So it's not going to fix everything, and we really want to be working with mutual aid and other kind of more immediate things too. But we think it's important to think about these power system changes so that we can have a better system in the future.
Nice. One thing I would say, and this just giving a tweak.
Give me a note here.
Yeah, giving you a note is when people are like kind of, and this is for everyone when they're talking to folks in, you know, the field or whatever, it's like, so this person just brought up hunger or paying rent. Mm-hmm. How does ranked choice voting directly relate to that? Just say it directly relates to the kind of leaders we're going to have who will be actually representing the people's needs of our communities. And I think that is one way to approach it from that angle and bring the abstract to the tangible. Okay, so.
Oh yeah, so and there's some good points in the chat here that, like, you know, you can do both. Thinking about the future doesn't mean we shouldn't be worrying about immediate things. Right. And then, like, also this is about a root cause issue, right? The two-party system, even if you are a Democrat, a diehard Democrat, the two-party system is the reason we have Trump. And so I think there's a lot of, we really have to get at, the system is broken. We have to pull it out from the roots and rethink a lot of our assumptions.
So now y'all are gonna practice.
So I'm gonna drop the talking points in the chat real quick before Rohan sends us to pairs. But think about, you know, what this would mean to you, what this would mean for your communities. And let me drop these in the chat before. Ooh, I don't have them handy.
And I also want to say, don't feel like you have to get this perfect. Just kind of try practicing pitching ranked choice voting to someone and being present in the conversation, whatever that means for you, whatever that looks like for you, even if it's like, I'm not convinced about this, that's fine.
All right, let's see if this works. Ugh, never mind, this isn't working. Okay.
So
I think
Rohan,
y'all are
go
gonna
ahead
have to
and
generate
share.
it yourself. I hope that's all right. All right, here we go.
All right. No pressure, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Cheryl. We're just coming back from breakout rooms. But yeah, they're
Oh,
Bree and Sam. They're there.
I'm
Hey,
so sorry. Hi, how are you?
Girl, what is going on?
Who is this I'm speaking with?
Bree, you probably know Sam, you don't know me, but I know you because of conversations. Anyways.
No, what's your name again? I want to get it. What's your name again?
Bree. It's short for Brianna.
Brianna. Are you on next?
We just came back from a breakout group practice. So type in the chat, everybody. How did y'all feel about that first practice round? Did you speak from your perspective, from your community? What kind of tactics or arguments did you use? I'm very curious to see how people went about their practice pair.
And in the meantime, and Cheryl, you can tap in a little bit, though. You might need some support from your partner when we jump in. We're going to do another pair practice talking about ranked choice voting and why it's powerful. But I wanted to use a little improvisational exercises here. And if you're able to stand up and actually move and use your body a little bit, because you know, moving our bodies actually activates parts of our brain, other parts of our brain. And our brains are actually in our bodies too. And we have a deeper understanding and a deeper kind of ability to be persuasive and passionate and present. So when we use our arms, when we kind of, you know, if we're talking to people on the street, we're going to be standing. So I encourage you in this next one to kind of get up, take deep breaths, and really use your whole body in the way that you talk to this person.
And of course, if you cannot move, however your body allows you to move, and that is okay.
Okay, so we're gonna practice again.
With hopefully someone different.
Yeah, hopefully just someone different, and if not, that's okay too.
But be able to dance, really fill this one out, be able to dance in the conversation. And if you can get into a deeper like level of conversation, even talking about your actual personal experiences, if you haven't yet, that would be a suggestion, I would say, to try and practice.
And so, yeah, so you can talk about ranked choice voting, but also you can talk about the future, right? Like of what you want to change about our system and talking about the system being broken and really tap into that passion in your body. All right, Rohan, are we ready to do another breakout pair?
Sweet.
All right, so go ahead and jump in and share with your partner about what you want for the future. Sorry,
Hello?
Cheryl, we got cut off there.
So,
Oh. Cheryl, I think you're muted, but that's okay.
okay. Can you hear me? I mean, you probably could hear me. Yeah. So if I can give you all an example of what I mean by the choice, I voted for Trump when the first time around because I was disgusted with the way things were going, and I honestly, can you all hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cheryl,
yeah.
though we finished the breakout room though, so
Okay.
but I do want to talk about this with you later though. Is that all right?
I think, Cheryl, you brought up something very salient, which is the current system doesn't work. So you're in this space of exploring what can address these inequities in our system, especially from a racial perspective of like the way a lot of the Black vote, how it's disenfranchised. And so you're exploring like what ways can we bring equity into our systems. And so I hear that. And that's actually right on. That's perfect. I think that gets at the next slide, which is hearing concerns. So everyone, how did y'all's second practice go?
Yeah, was it any different
For
when
y'all?
you
We
actually
were just like
engaged
using our
your body a
bodies,
little bit?
like being very silly about it. But obviously just being able to use gestures. I think some of the important things to also consider is tying it back to the future government that you want to see. So if you ever get stumped on how do I actually articulate this, just take a step back and say, what do you want to see? And how can ranked choice voting get you there? Or get our voting electoral systems there, blah, blah, blah.
And I think for a lot of people, they might, not fully see the impact, or maybe disagree with that, with some of the data that shows that women and people of color are more likely to run and be elected, or anything like that.
So it is important in any conversation to allow space for pushback and address people's concerns. What concerns do they have? And then what concerns do you hear, and actually repeat back to folks what concerns you are hearing. So I hear that you think ranked choice voting isn't actually the solution because XYZ. And then sometimes I do gotta say it's hard because what people might say is a concern may not actually be their concern. And that's a bit of a slippery area. And that's where you gotta kind of dance in that conversation with folks. But I think the most important thing is to create space for validation for both sides. I mean, hopefully the person you're engaging with is also like saying, I hear you. But if not, at least you can say, I'm hearing your concerns. And also, if y'all have concerns about ranked choice voting in general, feel free to reach out to the coalition and say, hey, can we even do a teach-in on all these concerns that I have and that my community has, or the people I'm hearing about having these concerns that I haven't really heard addressed? Reach out to the coalition with them, and we would be so happy to do an event just based purely on like concerns around ranked choice voting and how to affect DC folks. So yeah, and don't be shy, be brave with your bullshit as part of our grounding rules. So that's also a part of addressing concerns and also dealing with the ways in which you might be toxic and not really articulating how you're presenting the conversation. So it's always something to keep in mind. And that leads us to taking action. Now that we have our talking points, we've talked with folks in this teach-in around how to articulate ranked choice voting from your perspective, from your community's perspective, representing where you're from, and how things aren't working for your communities. Ways to take action around that is to join our movement, join the coalition at rankthe.vote/Discord. That's kind of like our communication application, if you will. It's like a chat, but encrypted.
It's like Slack, but a little less
it's like
corporate,
Slack, but encrypted. And so say hello and find your role in our coalition. Sign a letter of support too. Also, another way to take action is advocate in your communities. So ask your ANC, civic association, local DIM group to sign a letter of support, or call your council member and be an ambassador And you can also donate to the coalition. And ways to find out how you can actually advocate is go to rankthe.vote/advocate, and there are action steps in that document, and also ways to call your council member. We have specific days where we are doing like a coalition calling specific council members. And so that meaning the next person we're calling is Robert White. So on January 19th, we're all going to call his office, which is the day after MLK Day. So pick a slot, and we're going to be calling him all day, just saying, hi, how are you? Congratulations on being sworn in again. We need ranked choice voting, and here's why. From my perspective, we need you to support this bill that will be introduced.
And he's actually expressed some support in the city paper voter guide this past year, but hasn't vocally supported it. So that's why we're focusing on him, because as we'll see on the next slide, the plan is to just pass it in council. You need 7 votes to pass it, to pass a bill. We want to get more than that, and we're hopeful that we can. And there also is some slightly more complications with the committees and stuff, but we're working on all that at the same time. We have 6 yeses right now. The bill should be introduced in the next couple months. And we're hopeful that we can get our last vote on the bill when it's introduced. And that could be Robert White, and it could also be Brooke Pinto, both of who've expressed support in the past. Trayon White and to a lesser extent, Kenya McDuffie are also targets that we think are movable on this, but we don't really know where they stand. We haven't heard them talk about the issue at all. So that's really the basic of it. A ballot initiative might be in the cards in the future, but we're really hopeful. That we can get it done just in council. And the Judiciary Committee did not. It's the same folks.
Yep. So join.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so join the movement, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at rankthe.vote DC. Angel is one of our social media gurus with Instagram, and Rohan is doing the social media on Twitter. So if you want to directly DM them on more things, ways to get tapped into being social media volunteering, they're the people to reach out to. You can also go to our website at rankthe.votedc.org, and you can email us at rankthe.votedc@gmail.com. And why don't we all voted halfway through about our favorite freedom fighters. So let's see the election results. This is also a continuation. There was not 326 votes. This is a continual vote that we do at our teach-ins and things like that. So there's not 326 folks here, but we are contributing to the larger body that is our study that we're doing.
So in the first round, Harriet Tubman was in the lead. She would have won in a normal election.
But see how she does not, she's only representing 29% of the populace. Of the
first choice votes. So you eliminate the last place vote, Rosa Parks, her votes moved to Shirley Chisholm. Seem all of the people put Shirley Chisholm next. You see nobody's reached 50% again. And as round by round, you start eliminating the last place people, and their votes now go towards their second choices.
Their second or third choices.
When John Lewis was eliminated, or when John Lewis was taken out of the running, a lot of his votes went to James Baldwin. Some went to Harriet Tubman. Some went to Malcolm X. MLK is out of the race now. James Baldwin is much closer to Harriet Tubman now. Malcolm X is out of the race, and it's still neck and neck between Tubman and Baldwin. Fannie Lou Hamer is in last place, and almost all of her votes go to Harriet Tubman. And Harriet Tubman was the winner in a normal election too, so it doesn't always change the results, right? So some people who think this is going to screw every incumbent over, it isn't necessarily true. What this does is just make sure that we have a really strong consensus choice who wins.
Yay, Harriet Tubman, get on that $20 bill.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that is our Ambassador of the Future training. Thank y'all everyone for joining. I think we can stop sharing.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. And yeah, so we meet every Monday. We have working sessions, and then we have one general body meeting once a month on Mondays. And so if you want to see us do a teach-in for your organization or for your community or whatever you're tapped into, feel free to reach out to us. We're always trying to educate folks. That's what we're really focusing on right now. And yeah, I also feel like if y'all want to lead a presentation, since y'all have gotten into the roll up your sleeves and talked with folks about how to advocate for this, if you would like to lead a teach-in as well, please reach out to us. We are always looking for folks to lead these teach-ins for different groups.
And especially if you have organizations who you're a part of and you organize with, we really want to build our coalition out. So we'd love to connect with them. And if you wanted to present to them and yeah, have them become part of the movement, we'd love that as well.
Definitely Matt was saying that suggestions or talking points are bad. We had those and we could not figure out a way to post them because we are Luddites. So I feel like next time we should just have that just be thrown into the chat. But yeah, this is our first Ambassador of the Future teach-in. So y'all are kind of the guinea pigs. So thank y'all for bearing with us. But yeah, definitely having suggested talking points and guiding questions, I think, could help facilitate better the practice sessions.
Oh, and the
but the objections you get.
I think having both in
I like that.
one document would be super helpful. Are there any other thoughts or sort of feedback? You can either reach out to us again, rankthe.vote@gmail.com, or just jump in the chat or talk out loud now as well.
And Rohan, I think you can stop recording at this point.